connecting from Chile, James too is connecting from the UK, Anastasia connecting, I guess, from Barcelona, as well as Oscar Tomiko. So I actually, I organized somehow that the flow goes in time zones. I'm taking this from, you're familiar with this, Nadya? We're used to this. So we're going to start with Nadya, starting, you woke up very, very early. I think you deserve to be the first for sure. So.
Sounds good. I sent you a presentation in chat if you want to share it. Hello, everyone. I am Nadya Peak. I am an assistant professor at the University of Washington in human-centered design and engineering. And I have known Tomas Diaz since 2008 when we were both students taking how to make almost anything. And every now and then we would be like, oh my God, Tio, what are you doing for this homework?
I have to say that we were all like super inspired by your tutorials. I mean, come on, it saved my ass.
I still try to do a lot of tutorials, but now they're less and less useful.
Okay.
Yes, my lab is called Machine Agency, and we're focused on the precision of machines, or the accuracy that you can get from computer control, but specifically in the agency of individuals. So the creativity that individuals might be able to express using that kind of precision. And so unlike historical use of computer control, which is really about efficiency and speeding processes up, I'm interested in how to make it as easy as possible to use computer control for really diverse things in the first place. And so some of you who've taken Fab Academy maybe in the past, yeah?
I'm going to change the rules of the game on the fly. You take over the screen, every one of you. I'm sorry to change it because my bandwidth is horrible. And it's going to affect
you have disabled screen sharing though. You have to enable screen.
I think that you got it now, correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so I'm yes, control. Yeah, so I'm interested in how we can make it as easy as possible to automate different processes, whether it's taking existing infrastructure like existing robotic arms or other machines and reprogramming them to be able to do new different kinds of things, or if it's making new machines from scratch. And those of you who are in Fab Academy maybe remember using these modular reconfigurable cardboard stages for making machines. And I think that there's an educational component to this where you learn about the electronics and the software to control a machine and the mechanics of a machine, but also this notion of creating application-specific computer-controlled tools, I think is really cool. Being able to make a whole instance of a workflow that is automated in a week or two rather than in months, I think is really exciting. And there are other projects that we're currently working on. This is Jubilee, which is mainly being developed by my student Joshua Vasquez. And this one is in particular, lets you pick up and drop off different heads so you can start using multiple tools in a single workflow. So it's not that you laser cut something first and you take it out and you do something else, but you start developing workflows where you can take advantage of multiple heads in one system, and also being able to have interactive interfaces or insight into how machines work. So you guys are familiar with MODS maybe, which was part of development at the Center for Bits and Atoms, but also my student Jasper Tran O'Leary, who is working on projecting into machine work envelopes to give you insight into what the machine is doing, how it's doing it, and how you might reconfigure the workflow. And a big component of this is community and understanding how we can build and use this kind of infrastructure, not at a huge centralized industrial scale, but in this distributed way. And a lot of that has to do with understanding how to design bill of materials so that you can have access to the parts, creating a lot of documentation about things, and fostering community to be able to grow this. And right now, you know, like many other labs around the world, my lab at university is shut down. But all of my students, some of which you see on Zoom here on the right, have machines that they're running in their bedrooms. So maybe that's what the future holds.
Super, Nadia. Thank you so much. Just perfect on timing. So following the, we will go back to questions. I'm taking some notes. And also we will be receiving questions from people in the audience. But continue with the geographical transposing. We go to Monterrey in Mexico. I hope that is correct.
Yes, I'm ready. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Tomas. Let me share my screen now. Okay, give me a second to get started. Okay, so yes, I'm Alejandra. I'm in Mexico, and I want to start saying that I'm an architect too. I'm an ex-yacker, and but I do a lot of things. I like a lot of things in different areas, and I are very difficult to explain what I do sometimes. But I found that these three concepts are present in all the work I do: design, learning, and community. And the common denominator is always making. So as a designer, I do a mix of digital fabrication and parametric design. And then there's always the traditional processes that are present, especially in the finishing and the assembly of things. I work in many different scales, from space to objects and even small machines. And this is some of the work that I've done in the last couple of years. But I also do something special in my lab that is called Laboratorio de Diseño Avanzado. That is a lot of interdiscipline. We work in people from many areas. And this is a project that we just finished in collaboration with the National Fund of the Culture of the Arts in Mexico. And it was an exhibit in a museum in Mexico City, where we presented like very common objects and experiences for people to understand about genetic engineering and biofabrication. So what you see there is a E. coli that is genetically transformed to fluorescent or to bright in the light. And then we did something similar with beer. Of course, this beer cannot be drunk yet, but it was very interesting and caught the eye of the audience. And to make this type of things with genetic engineering, I work with my friends of Cynthia that are biotechnologists to design these little machines, because in Latin America, we have this problem of access to equipment. It's very expensive and very difficult to get. So we designed these three machines for doing genetic engineering. You can make this in a fab lab, and you can, it's also very cheap, and it works very well. Not a lot of quality too. So all this happens in the university where I work. I work in Tec de Monterrey in this space called Innovation Gym. I used to manage the lab, the Maker Lab, but now I'm studying my PhD. But it's a very cool open space, where we do a lot of interdisciplinary work and making for learning for the students. This is one example of that. This is an activity we did. We work with researchers and students of many areas to experiment with different biopolymers and agave fibers to do this new material for 3D printed, made of local materials, no? And then we also work a lot with the School of Education in Tec de Monterrey. And one of the most significant work that I've done there is this fab lab we opened in this area called La Campana. La Campana is a very iconic area of Monterrey. It's very big and very affected by drug trafficking. So we decided to start a fab lab there, right in the middle of the slum. And it's special for kids and young people, just to keep the young out of the streets. And it's been very, very successful in the last year. And one of the things we did here to activate the lab was an activity of participatory design with the community to activate space that was very, very forgotten and it was actually like a trash area there. Like, it's actually this space that you hear in the left. And through a participatory design activity, we did these geometries, we digitalized them, then we of course made the molds in the CNC machine. To do this small, with little resources, we transformed this space. And the good news is that they keep trying to improve it. So what started being something small is now a bigger urban space for all these people to enjoy. And it's been one of the very successful things. And we also there in Fabla Campana run this program for kids that is also part of Fab Lab Kids. That is an initiative for education in the Latin American network of Fab Labs. And our main feature here is to celebrate multiculturality through technology. An example of this is this thing we have called Global Kids Day. Last year we celebrated Japan. And what we do is we choose a culture and we do an activity that involves digital fabrication and culture. So for Japan, we did koinoboris, that are these little fishes of love. We laser cut them, and a lot of countries participated, learned about Japan, some words and some expressions for them, and then share the results online, all connected at the same time. This year, we're gonna celebrate Africa next month, and I think it's gonna be really, really cool. And I just wanna end up saying, I just wanna finish saying that, you know, what my work doesn't focus on the technology and the technical part, but more about the mindset and the people, like what we can do when we think as makers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. Really, really on the spot, and really, really complementary to what we heard from Nadya. And I think that we will be building up between one presentation and the other. Now we can jump from Monterrey to Santiago de Chile, a little bit south.
Yeah. Thank you, Tomas. Hello, everyone.
Tomas?
Yes, hello. As well,
Hi.
I'm an architect. Hi, everyone. As well, I'm an architect. I studied at IAC also. I did my Fab Academy at Fab Lab Barcelona. Now I'm assistant professor in the School of Design of the Catholic University here in Santiago de Chile. Also, I'm doing a PhD candidate in the Digital Filters group in Tongji University in Shanghai. And I also direct Fab Lab Austral, that is the southernmost Fab Lab of the Fab Lab network that we inaugurate on January of last year with a big donation of the Fab Foundation, the CBA of the MIT, and SolidWorks. So my introduction today will be more than showing some kind of answers or projects. I bring some questions to discuss maybe. So instead of thinking about, or when we think about how do we design for living, the question that we should be doing now is where do we design? So my open questions will be in 4 main theoretical or maybe more abstract guidelines. And the first one is where do we design and how do we design in stochastic environments that are constantly changing and environments that we don't know what could happen in the future, like now, no? So, and this came from a very simple observation. Last year I was going to Puerto Williams, that is the southernmost city of the world, to the Fab Lab, and there were no planes, so I took the ship. It's a 2-day trip, and you go down to the Tierra del Fuego, Patagonia. It's much southern than Patagonia, and you see these huge glaciers. And this was very interesting because I was talking with someone on the boat, and he told me that all this height, that is almost 300 meters, only 9 years ago, it decreased around 200 meters. So the idea of that a millennium, glacier can stay through time is just an abstract idea, because everything is changing constantly. So if we have a stochastic environments that are constantly changing matter or changing objects or changing society, and we don't have any kind of resistance, or this means also if we cannot adapt to these changes, then we will create an unidirectional flow, let's say. And this goes completely the opposite, the unidirectional flow, about what does it mean to keep life, or how do we make life. So mitosis and is just the change or the evolution of chromosomes in order to create new cells. So in order to maintain making life means to interact, but also means to adapt, and also means to replicate. The second observation is the impact of the urban landscape, or the urban over the landscape. And this is Puerto Williams. I say the southernmost city of the world, where we have a fab lab there. And this is our environment. So if for Europe's, or if the cities are to Europe, what maybe landscapes are to America. And we know that when we go downstairs, now that everything is closed in almost all the cities of the world, but we go downstairs to the shop and we go to buy something, we need to understand, but really deeply understand, where those things, goods, come from. This is the biggest copper mining in the world, that is called Chuquicamata in the north, in the desert of Chile. And this is a global infrastructure located in a landscape, and this is an abstracted landscape. This is an infrastructure of the urban. This is one of the biggest wine growing areas in Chile. That is, everything goes to outside, to Europe maybe, or to North America, whatever. But this is also, this is the Central Valley in Chile. It's also an extractive landscape. So this is a rural infrastructure that is working for the urban infrastructure. And this is the south of Chile. What you can see here in the bottom are the salmon's aquaculture infrastructure that is also serving to the urban landscape. And also you can see that all the land is also subdivided and structured. So we cannot talk anymore about maybe the rural settlements. And this is how this is a very beautiful map about the hydropower plants and the global copper extraction. So this is a global copper structure. So with this map, we can understand that there is almost no piece of land in the world that is not working to the urban or to the urban systems. So the rural is colonized by the urban systems, and the emergence, and we are seeing an emergence of the rural urbanization processes. So where do we design? We need to understand that when we design into an urban or maybe rural landscape. The third idea is the idea of abundance. This is what we know for abundance, no? Maybe this COVID-19 crisis opened me the reflection that we are super used to design for abundance. We can go down our buildings, we can shop whatever we want, we can use, we can throw up, we can throw things away, but that idea of abundance is more than an illusion. In fact, we don't design in abundance. When we design abundance, we're designing this at the end. These are the consequences of design, sort of broken landscapes. So, and also that broken landscapes increase the amount of earth that we need. So instead of designing for abundance, maybe we need to design for this, for emptiness, from to scarcity. This is the Times Square, almost empty. So abundance is actually an illusion. And the fourth and last idea is, how do we design for distribution? Yeah, we know that distributed networks are multiply powered, are bidirectional, are hierarchical. We are all the same in the distributed network, in a digital network. So it has medium probability or less probability of failure, because we can adapt more fast. And also we can have multiple energy to produce objects. So undistributed networks, it goes much more closer to a shared property, where we can build up resilient ecosystem, resilient communities. But that means that we need to change from an object-oriented design process to a non-object-oriented design. And we need to change design, we have to design interventions instead of objects. And this is an image of Fab Lab Austral in June of last year. And this is what we're doing. At the end of the world, this is where Puerto Williams is the southernmost city, as I said before, but it's in a rural area. that has no connection to high-speed internet. So we have an offline, completely offline Fab Lab. The Fab Lab is just here. That is the Fab Lab. And this settlement, this is what we, through this settlement, we want to create a sustainable model of development to build up the future. Yeah, but as it has no internet connection and energy comes by ship 1 time a week, and also every goods and products comes by ship, we are now seeing that there is kind of a digital narrow where once high-speed fiber optics is implemented, we can start import things digitally and stop importing things physically by the chip. So we can produce local things in the Fab Lab instead of importing things. So this is a digital narrow that we need to understand and design with the community. So we mix technology, landscape, and people in the Fab Lab. So, and just to close, if the present underlines structures and bad practices from the past, then we need to design for future living. We cannot design for the present. Because if the present is based on abundance, and abundance is an illusion, maybe the present or the way how we are living the present is an illusion. So the most real things that we can do now is to design for the future instead of designing for the present. So this means a couple of questions, which is the role of an AI in future design, or AI in predict the future. How we can move from an object-oriented design process to a non-object-oriented design processes. Which is the role of natural systems and living organisms. We were seeing before the work of Alejandra with bacteria, mushrooms, myceliums, and so forth. How do we distribute design, production, and resources, and how do we change from a user-centered design to an ecosystem-centered or based design? So these are my general questions that maybe we can discuss. I know that it's a little bit abstract, but instead of showing results, I want to ask some questions for the discussions. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tomas. Again, I think I have the feeling that we keep building up. Next is James, and to add more to the mix, we're creating an amazing soup here. I love soup, by the way. Go ahead.
Cool. Right. Well, I'm going to take over. So thanks, Tomas, or both Tomases. So I'll share my screen. Right. So that I think sets me up beautifully. Hopefully everyone can see this. So over the last few years, I've been developing kind of set of ideas and approaches, not on my own, but with the amazing people that I get to work with. So Tomas and I developed a teaching studio at the Royal College of Art called Exploring Emergent Futures, which we also worked with Liz Corbin on. And that evolved and was built on in quite significant ways in terms of the Masters for Design for Emergent Futures at IAC. And quite recently, I moved from the Royal College of Art, and I've taken a post at the University of Brighton as a senior lecturer running the product design undergrad course. And within that course, we have studios very similar to how we ran things at the Royal College of Art. And one of those is run by the amazing Nat Hunter and Gareth Owen Lloyd from Other Today, but their studio focuses on distributed production, circular economy, those sorts of things. But one of the kind of crucial elements of all of this teaching, all of this work, is about the bridge between the present and the near future. That the future is emerging, and it's emerging at different speeds from different places, different trajectories. And the futures that we craft, because there is no one homogenized future, we don't live in a shared experience, but the futures that we create are created by the rules that we give ourselves, the things that we govern ourselves with, whether it's our expectations or standards or just what we see as kind of economic logics. And I think that in designing for these emergent futures, we have to take those elements and we have to question all of it. You know, very much as Tomas was saying, that, you know, we need to be thinking about designing out waste at the end of the process. We need to be thinking about the impacts of design on landscape. The these are all the kind of big questions we need to tackle in moving from the present into a future that we think of as desirable. So I'll give you a kind of quick whiz around like where my work stems from. So hopefully I can, so I trained as a furniture designer and maker. And then when I went to the Royal College of Art as a student, my work started to engage with the digital sharing of design information and the potential for that work to be a piece of dialogue where I can talk to other people about the values I had. So I designed a series of chairs. It's my comfort zone. I like chairs and furniture. But it was very much about utilizing waste material, teaching people how to make, designing in variability, enabling people to make things where a level of precision didn't, or a lack of precision didn't necessarily ruin the final outcome. So openness in design isn't just about sharing an idea, it's about really trying to engage with someone else and trying to enable them to benefit from what you're doing. But also there's questions about what the value of openness is in design. Like what's the business model for giving ideas away? And that's one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about over the last few years. How is value created rather than how is capital generated or acquired? So it went on to other projects where I was thinking about furniture systems, multi-sided markets, as in the case with Open Desk. So thinking about how a designer can sell the sort of access to the design at a reduced rate, or as in the case with this project, collaboration with a Fab Lab to help develop the project. So I developed this furniture system, which is it's a fairly standard, well-trodden furniture approach of hanging things on rails on the wall, but thinking about how that integrates into CNC digital production, thinking about how that becomes a kind of community development process where people can actually just modify these. And I learn as a designer about the things that I've created rather than as a designer assuming I know everything about the use of a final design. So that's been a really valuable process for me. And then it also leads to some of the responses that we're seeing globally for making PPE. So I've been involved in this where I live. We've made nearly 1,500 visors for the local health authority. For my best mate is a paramedic who's wearing the kind of full hazmat suit. So it's kind of feeds into what's the benefit of sharing? What's the value in sharing? And I think we can really see the value in sharing is that there's a speed to it and there's a kind of flexibility to it that I think speaks to some of the ambition of the Fab City network, this idea where value can be created on the ground without really trying to chase sort of transactional value. This connects to some of the work that I've done with Tomas at IAC. So this is part of the Made Again challenge where we were thinking about localized production. And in this case, we were working with Space 10 and IKEA and thinking about really what's the relationship between waste and products and waste within a city, and how do you have a kind of circular or spiral flow of materials within cities. This led to, this was connected directly into the teaching that Tomas, Diaz and I were doing at the RCA. So this is a project we ran with our students at Space 10, thinking about how a company like IKEA could pivot to be localized and kind of totally enmeshed into a circular economy. How does that work? How can IKEA survive, but really change the fundamentals of their business model? Connects to some of the research work that I've done around the connection between open fabrication spaces, maker spaces, and the redistribution, reconfiguration of industry based on the logics of circular economy and the advancement in digital production. So I've done a lot of work thinking about how digital production finds its way into retail, the relationship between retail products and waste recycling centers, and really trying to unpick some of the relationships between elements in a kind of future circular economy. This also connects to some of my consulting work. So this is a project that's been built next to Brighton University called PlusX, which is a innovation center predominantly focused around physical products, but the work that I did with them early on was thinking about what kinds of companies they incubate, what is the future of this city that we live in, and how might they play a role in creating not just products of the future, but the future we want through the products we create. I've just taken over Brighton Fab Lab, which is now going to be the Fab City Lab Brighton, and it's halfway through being constructed. So this is kind of it, mothballed, but hopefully when I get back in, that'll kind of be built back up so that it does add a provision to us for our teaching, but also a kind of home for the research that we want to be doing. And we're also developing a project we've called Matterlog, which is a kind of open catalogue of material data. So what we want to do, and I've been working on this for quite a long time, is take material information that's already available in the world and stitch it together into a kind of open web, so that you're no longer looking for information in principle, you're looking for information in reality. And the fundamental reason for that is if you're doing open design projects, you don't want to know about a material you could use. You need to factor into any design the material you will use and have that parameterize or affect the design that you're doing. Also in terms of assessment for life cycle analysis or impact assessment or cost, etc. So having this kind of open web of material knowledge, I think, is one of the key parts that will drive a circular economy in the future, certainly a democratic one, which is what we want. We don't want a hegemonic circular economy. And I'm also in the process of kind of trying to get Fab City Brighton established as a thing, COVID being somewhat problematic, but that's because the council have got other things to do than listen to me at the moment, like, make sure that all the healthcare providers have PPE and the bins still get collected. But this is an ongoing conversation, so hopefully we'll have traction on that fairly soon. So yeah, thank you very much.
Super. Thank you so much, James. And I have to say that, COVID-19 and whatever is happening is actually accelerating these transitions, and it has been incredible how we have received tremendous amount of questions and requests about Fab City after COVID. And
yeah,
I think the PPE,
just say on that is that I think it's brought into a kind of level of clarity, certainly through the conversations I've had with people within Brighton Council, that this is a significant thing and it needs to be taken on, and to the point where I'm hoping that they will be working with me and the team at Brighton University to celebrate all of the people that have been making all of the PPE equipment and everything else within the city, and using that to kind of catalyze this move forward to think about, well, what a circular economy plan is for the city, but coupled with production that can take place here and a kind of recapturing of material value here.
Super, super. We keep building up again. It's going to be like quite a challenge to then, and it will be interesting to start to put together, these, I think there's different approaches, but like with shared values, shared networks, and shared certain approaches. Let's go to Anastasia now. Anastasia.
Super. Yes, I will. Yeah, can you hear me? Perfect. So I will share my screen, and I will also ask you to cut me if it takes me too long. I have this typical issue of taking longer. So, okay. You see my screen?
Yes.
So it's been very nice to be here with you, because I am at the IAC Fab Lab Barcelona for the last 10 years. I studied together with Tomas Vivanco, and it's very nice to see also what everybody's doing and catch up. I have been working in the Fab Lab Barcelona, mainly leading the project of Fab Textiles, which is actually researching on the implications and applications of digital fabrication onto textiles, fashion. So mainly whatever I do is oriented in applied into this specific industry, which is a giant, and it has similar sequences with other industries as well. So it's my case study, it's my terrain, it's my field of testing. And basically, I think that most of the times we approach design within the Fab Lab network in a way that is hands-on. We say learning by doing, but also design by testing. And we have been making different let's say, experiments that we actually turned into practices that can be taught in an informal education context, such as the one of Fab Academy, and also the one of Fabricademy, that is the program that I'm leading for the last 3 years. So the approach that the other speakers also talked about is to design systems and rather than products, because we are shifting from an economy of products to an economy of subscription and services. And people want more and more to have a talk and a call about what they will consume. They want to hyper customize their clothing, for example. And actually technology gives us the power to do that. So in the concept of design by testing, we bring questions that we are trying to answer through experiments. So if we think about hyper customization, then we would answer that with local manufacturing and distributed manufacturing that can happen in networks such as the Fab Lab. And we question ourselves, can we imagine a future without shipping? Actually, the current COVID crisis shows us quite the opposite, but we believe that we can design and we can define the interaction that we have with technology. And we make a test. So we made this open source bag that you can customize and fabricate everywhere. And what we get, and the same thing that James was talking about, is that we get back the value of the community. We get back the customization and the creation of a network that is more vibrant than any other kind of economy. And then we try to also systematize this in a way that can be accessible and open source to the rest of the world by creating platforms. For example, this open source circular fashion platform where you can, it's kind of like the Thingiverse, where you can download the patterns, mainly that you can laser cut, but you can also tune them, and they are vector designs, so you can actually customize them. And then we try, as Nadya was saying in the beginning, to create our own machines and tools. So we think about automation, and we actually sometimes we don't know which side we need to take. Are we technophobics or are we technophilic? So I believe that it's kind of the same, it's a different side of the same coin. We need to define, technophilia is like, or technophobia is where we define our relationship between technology and society. So there will be some people that they will feel that automation is taking over, and it will people will lose their jobs. But also there will be another perspective where we believe that technology gives opportunity, creates new jobs, and creates new interactions with us and our extension of our bodies. No, we need to design technologies that they are seamless. They are actually seamless interaction with our bodies and tech. So we also make technology fit our purpose, and we can hack machines, and we can talk more about new concepts such as flexible manufacturing, when you have machines that they can do different things, not only one linear process. And we use these as case studies. We apply additive manufacturing on fabrics, and we question if this will be the future of customization, if this is responding to the needs of the industry 4.0. And how can products create actually new aesthetics and new functions, because technology is not a mere tool. Technology is a lot more than that. It can create the way that you design, the way you fabricate. It can create new aesthetics, new function, and it can make you be more and more connected. So we have made various projects that they are combining this craft and the tech, and many times we see that it is also a vehicle for rescuing old crafts that due to mass production they are being extinct, such as this leather molding technique that it's a medieval technique that I'm really fond of. And in the end, you really question yourself after being many years into a making process, because it makes you reflect, maybe in the beginning because you're under a hype of new tools and new tech, you're not so conscious, but after some point you get more reflective, and then you start asking yourself, where does the material come from? And then with all your actions and research, you try to close the loop. You try to apply more circular design processes that you can actually feed and create closed material feedstocks. So in very important part is to be conscious about your choices. And choices can be either sustainable or less, but at least we need to be conscious from the beginning, and maybe work also with living organism. In this case, understanding design from a different perspective, so bio-design practices where you actually start creating with a living organism, and in this case, textile bacterial dyeing, or understanding design and something that has time embedded within. So the question would be how we can design and embed the lifetime cycle assessment of the product. How we can embed the life, how we can grow fabrics, or how we can create new interactions with wearing live garments. Now, this is a very nice final project of Lara Campos and Fabricademy 2019. And in the end, making a research when it comes to understand the value of closed loop systems, you end to work with trash. So you work with garbage, and you understand that garbage can actually be your feedstock, can be valuable. Your trash is my treasure. And you can create new aesthetics. You can create new materials, biotextiles. You can tackle into more activism and actions that your creations and your designs are manifestos, that in this case, they are talking about ecofeminism and how we are related to nature. And all of these try to put it under a perspective of openness, because it is kind of, I was recently reading that 90% of the most important inventions are open source, but we just don't know it. So how we can distribute and learn all of this in a network way, and we creating a tangible interface where we can actually feel and see the techniques, we can touch them, and also how we can disseminate all of these practices of material activism in a material library and a genealogy of recipes that people can take and they can continue, tune, remix, and experiment, basically. So I hope that it didn't take too long.
Perfect. Perfect timing, Anastasia. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's jump with the last but not least, Oscar Tomiko. We are directing together the Master in Design for Emerging Futures. And Oscar is a reference in the design world. He also directs a degree program in design and engineering at the Lizaba, which is nothing small to say. But yeah, Oscar, I hand over to you, and then I will try to make like this massive mental effort or go put that back together in order to start the conversation afterwards.
Thank you, Tomas, and good luck with that massive effort that you will need to do later. So what I want to talk today, it's not that much on tools, but more on a mindset and a way of working. And it's a bit like my personal crusade for I don't know how many years, and it's about designing from a first-person perspective. So involve yourself in the process of designing. This relates a lot to work that has been done in some aesthetics, work that has been done in embodied design education, coming from dance, but also performing arts, work done in crafts and the idea of tacit knowledge, the idea also of doing interventions in society that a lot of comes from social design and other ones. And in a way, what I want to show you today, it's actually not that much a set of questions like some of them did. So I will provide you answers, and I will provide you an example that I think that can prove that this way of working actually works. So I'm going to share my screen also. And then I'm going to go in full screen here. So what you have here, it's actually an article that I wrote 10 years ago that was about how to design from a first-person perspective. So how to design from, for, and within a society or a system. And this is an article based on a final master project from Marcel van Heijst, a student from Eindhoven University of Technology, where I'm also assistant professor there. And what I'm going to show you is his process, how he got to what she made, but also where the project is now 10 years after. So I hope that with this, I can show you that taking a first-person perspective, it's an interesting way to design. It's a way to take a more personal, intimate relation with the context and the situation you want to design with, and that actually that can provide a completely different way of understanding what could be the role of design in terms of not working just from the lab, but working from the context, working with people. So what I'm going to show you here, it's like these different points of view. So in a way, we are all used to design from a third-person perspective, which means we look at from the distance to a situation. We try to analyze, model, and see what happens. We can also look at and work together with a small group of people, which is when we do kind of co-design sessions, participatory sessions, when we involve a little group. And we try to generalize from that little group into many more that exist. And I think that a first-person perspective, what tries to do is to involve the design process and the designer, him or herself, in the situation they want to design with. So we don't make a separation from the design process, from the design that you want to create. And especially if we are talking about designing systems, we will need systems to design systems. And it's the idea of this designing these socio-technical systems, the point that I'm trying to make here. So the project that Marcel van Heijst did in his final master project 10 years ago was about creating a distributed lighting system in India. And this was the project that he was working on. And as most of us do, started from a third-person perspective, started by looking at what can he do from the Netherlands for this situation that was happening in India. And what he ended up with in this first iteration was what he could do with the knowledge that he had, with what he could analyze from a distance. So what he did, it's like some kind of battery pack inspired almost by like a heat pad, because to make it a bit more rubberized, so we could make a super strong battery pack that we can share around. Of course, this didn't work and doesn't make any sense, because if you can repair these battery packs, if you can produce them in India, there is no point to export this technology coming from somewhere else. Then after this first attempt, he took like more a co-design approach. So he went to India and he started exploring together with a group of people what it means energy and how energy can be harvested from the sun and nature, and in which ways they were doing it. And what happens with this, it's sometimes what I call like an ethnographic trap, is that when you become an expert on a situation, when you know too much, then you won't be able to change it anymore. So he ended up doing something like, well, actually the best way to create energy, it's the way they're already doing. So we are gonna create some kind of system that allows people to share energy and ways of working between each other. Again, this is a compromise solution because it didn't really solve much. It just put the knowledge that he developed during these ethnographic or co-design sessions in a website so people can share them. So at the end of the day, and the second time that he went to India, then he decided to be his own system. He decided to be the person that actually was going to be a distributed lighting system and find with whom he could work with. So he started looking for developing actually a real business, working with other people, trying to actually make this happen. So maybe he collaborated with a university so they could do a course on building the lighting systems. He collaborated with a supply store to check how we could do these lights based on water bottles and the electronics and components that they had available in that shop. And then he also collaborated with a person that had a space where the shop could be created. And in a way, it's really interesting to understand that what we are trying to do here can completely changes the way of designing. So there's a clear implications for society. So we are designing with society. We are designing together with them, with the approach of like exploring what kind of relations can be created in the moment that we are working with. So we are, in a way, working on the adoption of the design while we are designing it, which completely changes the situation. It's designing from society for society. There's also implications for the economy. So a bit like what James had in his title, this can allow for switching from an extractive economy where we are trying to actually get the most out of everything and everyone, and shifting to like a regenerative economy, an economy where we share value with people that have a space that don't know what to use it for. We share value with a university that need to have a case to work on, or like a supply store that can create a specific way of creating revenue. And more specifically, an implication for design. This is a design process that's bottom-up, that's emergent in nature, that it's not about the concept that you develop, but actually it's being shaped as it goes. And I think that that's really interesting to move the conceptualization to the materials. And also, I think it was said before about the agency of the tools. So I think here is the agency of everything that's there and how everything shapes and co-shapes the situation that we are. So I don't want to be too long, but this is 10 years after. So this is the company, Rural Spark, in India, at this moment developing not just things for India, but also for Africa. And this modular system that was created at that moment, it's actually a reality. You can actually buy it, configure your kit, making it happen. So as I said before, it's not just in India, it also moved to Africa, and now it's powering quite a lot of houses there. So it became this kind of smart plug and play smart mini grids that can be set into different villages, that can be shared by different ones. And actually it's becoming quite big. So the idea that it's about working with people, it's about creating people to grow their own networks, to create their own initiatives, to create their own businesses. And working, as I said before, in a modular, high-quality system that can now power not just a light bulb, but a lot of other things. And it's scalable. And I think that that's really, really interesting. So you can become a distributor, you can actually become part of it. And again, it's a system. It's a system that has the kit, has the platform. It also has the possibility to work with financing it. And it has also this on-site service. And the most important part, it's all about empowering the local community. And the numbers, well, you can just read them here. So 200,000 people that have access to energy, energy created, impact on the environment of CO2 that have been saved, light hours that have been created, impact on the economy, etc., etc. So this is what I wanted to show. I just want to show that this approach of taking a first-person perspective, involving yourself, it's equally valuable to any others that exist, a second or a third-person perspective. And if we want to change things, we need to start by changing ourselves. Thank you. With this, I will finish.
Thank you so much. Well, yes, it's been like a whole, you know, a whole shower of amazing approaches, different approaches to design making, talking about aspects. I mean, what I see that somehow shared within like a, not that different, I would say, because you can see some complementarities, of course, in all of your work and your research, but also there is kind of a shared things between, I can see from outside, I think between all of us, no, I can include myself, no, I think like there is somehow an understanding of, you know, or some shared values, some tacit values about what's the role of design and what's the role of the tools and the technology in relationship with the world we want and the world that we are part of. Sometimes even without knowing it, we defend those values more or less in the lines that that Oscar was saying, being part of that system yourself and designing from within, no, as you say, Oscar, and not just being as an outsider, no. So I think that brings me also like the, you know, it's not only the values but also this attitude, no. There is a thing of attitude and mindset, as Alejandra was saying, which is a mindset, you know, how do you respond to something that you are seeing in front of you, and how do you decide to use your knowledge in the tools that you have available in order to give a response to that, no? You know, the tools are fundamental, and the way the tools can use us, or we can use the tools, and the knowledge about them, I think is key in how we craft, how we, you know, what is the limit in which the tools are crafting us, or when we are crafting the tools, no? And I think that's fundamental in the work of Nadya, and not only providing the knowledge on how to use certain type of technology, but actually, you know, understand that your work as a designer, technologist starts before that, no? And then you are not only shaped by the tool, but you can shape the tool. You know, with Tomas, we went to the corner of the world, and we learned about how important is understand the new peripheries as well. I think that's something that the geographies right now in the world are changing, and the peripheries, what is the periphery anyways, no? So now I think like you know, in a way, like the current accelerated transition that we're living on is somehow moving lines, borders, changing centralities, changing the understanding on where the power resides and where it's shifting. So everything seems to be moving around, and then somehow invites me to think about, you know, this notion of periphery, how it's being configured right now. And then, of course, I think that, you know, working with, I've been working, you know, very, very closely with Anastasia and with James, and I think like you share this idea of the material. I think like you need to join forces, of course, in relationship to the material libraries. I think it's one of those kind of like a classic projects. It's like how we can achieve that access to material knowledge and make it ubiquitous and accessible for everyone, no? So this is like my initial, somehow try to weave somehow your your different practices and your different approaches, although with a lot of shared values, as I say, and shared attitudes towards them. And I think like there is an obvious thing that somehow or a recent phenomena that somehow has I think has shown the importance of having access to tools and having the right attitude in relationship to those tools. No, and I think that we have seen that in the response to the COVID crisis. I reject and I really don't like when I hear like that makers are responding to crisis. It's people. I think I don't like that separation of saying these are the makers and this is the rest of the people. The makers are so special that they learn how to respond to the crisis. Actually, they were doctors, they were engineers, designers, non-designers, citizens, that they had access to the tools and they have access to the knowledge. So I think that I don't want to jump directly into asking to point people a question. I would say, do you have any questions for any one of you between you? You want to ask something to between yourselves? Ale?
No, I like to say something. I really like Oscar's presentation, and I think
Okay.
what he calls this third person perspective is something that we do a lot also here in Latin America, that we call participatory design, right? And it's like when you put in the position of the people, you hear from them, you co-create, and then you start from there to build something, right? And this thing is, at least here in all these areas that we work in Latin America, is very easy when you are in contact with the people. But now with this new crisis, I think it's gonna be, I feel like these people are gonna be more isolated. There is a communication problem between these neighborhoods or these slums and this type of design that you can co-create, co-design with them when you are at home, right? And this is gonna change the way we communicate and the way things happen. And I'm wondering, like, if you have a way of, you have thought how these because you were somewhere else when you were working in India, or your people, right? So it happened naturally, but the real answer was when he was there, right, working there and seeing what was happening. So in this new world, when we are going to have to keep distance and communication is going to be harder, I'm wondering like how these new dynamics are going to be. I think, at least in my city, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a big gap, and it's going to be more difficult to access and to actually co-design.
Yeah, so really briefly. So I think, like, as you said, taking this second person perspective where you collaborate with people, that you design with a specific group, I think that it becomes difficult in a way when you have a distance. But then there's another but also maybe physical connection, it's not happening, but there's a lot of new ways of relating to that can happen. What I mean is that people now are sharing recipes online and they are cooking together over the distance. They are actually, I don't know, doing yoga from their houses. There's people actually teaching from the other side of the world. And now we're having this meeting, which would have been impossible. So actually, I think that for some things, yes, it's going to be really difficult. And there's like a digital, how you call it, a digital bridge?
Digital divide.
Digital divide that's going to really make a difference. But I think that we are realizing now that people can use also Instagram for sharing things. So there's really basic social networks that can be used as tools, that can be used as ways of collaborating with others. And I think it's really about looking at all what you have around you, all the resources that you have, and especially the things that you use personally, like your own Instagram, your own things, as tools to actually collaborate and work with others. I think that there's really, really an interesting point now about being more personal. So it's a contradiction in a way. We are not together, but now I see everybody's houses. Well, some of you see a nice photo of the lab, but now I can even read the books you have behind, or you can see that I have plans. So in a way, not because it's digital doesn't mean that it's not personal. And I think what we really need to try to do is to keep this personal connection with them. So, and that's a bit like, for me, what I'm trying to do, and also what all the students from the master program are trying to do with these new interventions that they are doing, half online, half with their family, half with their friends. So I think in a way, because of the situation, you need to take it more personal. You need to use your personal resources, your personal connections, your personal network. So in a way, what could be seen as a disadvantage, I think it's opening up for a more close relation with the designers, from the designers and the society they want to design with.
I think also there is something about distributing the knowledge of design and not creating this interdependent or this depending role of you as a designer, let's say, and in a way that thing is one of the challenges that we have now. I think that we have seen a little bit of that within the Fab Lab network, on how, you know, a physical space with certain tools have attracted certain, you know, weird people. You know, it's a safe place for weird people. But at the same time, there has been a support on knowledge, like the Fab Academy or all the knowledge that is online, where people can also complement that. It's not only the physical space, it's not only the tools, but it's also the skill set that you can incorporate and then contextualize it, right? I think that that's important. And that's not trivial. I mean, the question now is that, you know, yes, a lot of knowledge is online, it's available, but also a lot of people is disconnected from the internet. And I think that's gonna be, you know, it's not only it's gonna be, it's a digital divide, but now, you know, it can create like a very, very huge distances between, as we haven't seen before. You know, I am from Venezuela, and what we see is that actually the level of subsistence is, you know, it's uncomparable with the European way of living, the European standards of the American. And the same happened in some other countries in Latin America. And also I see here in Indonesia as well, which is quite different. So I think that we're gonna face really, really big challenges in relationship on that division that is gonna be huge, which is before was like having a device and not knowing how to use it, or using it for only just a percentage of its capacity. But basically now we're leaving a lot of people behind with what is happening. I don't know what you think about it.
Hi.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I am skeptical about this, because at the same time I have the feeling that we can reach out to a lot more people. You know, that yes, I understand that there is a catching up and implementing and connecting the rest of the world that is not connected. But I think that it will eventually, it's very accelerated and it will happen quite fast. And I think that with this digital facilitation, we will be able to reach out and spread out all of this knowledge very a lot more. I mean, when you have Fab Academy or Fabricademy being taught in India, it's kind of radical, because you're teaching a course from MIT or from IAC or from wherever in the world in a distributed way with faculty from all over the world. And then you are reaching out to people that they are, in the case of the textile industry, they are there. So the industry is there, and you are having, so it's kind of like connecting and bridging, I think. So I'm not sure if I think that I think it's more like we're heading towards some kind of unification rather than division, personally. Or I am optimistic.
Nadya?
I think one thing that's been tricky about this process is what are the connections that are being made? So yes, we have this willingness where everyone is like, yeah, let's like be on Zoom and talk to each other. But the connection points that we're making are very much this like wheel and spoke But getting all of the different spokes to talk to each other, I find extremely difficult. I've been teaching digital fabrication online to master's students at the University of Washington this year. And to be honest, most of the time when I teach, people learn much more from each other than they learn from me. I just tell them what to do and then they learn from each other. And I've made some changes to the class to make it possible to teach digital fabrication. Everyone had to buy their own 3D printer, which is only $200 now, which is nuts. But getting the students to hang out together is extremely difficult. So getting students who normally would be in a studio together, prototyping together, facing problems together, and supporting each other. Now, everyone is working on their own and alone, and they see each other's documentation and they see each other's results, but they don't have this experience of being together. And that's something I find incredibly difficult to facilitate.
We had that challenge together with Oscar and the team of the master. And we haven't found the solution. And I see that some of the students some of our students are connected, but we unpack this in in the challenge that you have to create. This the thing of the class, the space of a class, where there is some kind of moment in which everybody is synchronized, right? There is someone talking about some subjects, and then in that moment, time and space is somehow shared. It's what's happening now, no? So the only thing is that time and space is variable. Is 10 p.m. here, I think it's 7 a.m. in Seattle, and their space is different, so completely different. But somehow we are coordinated in time and space somehow at the same time. It's different time, but it's the same time, and it's a digital space. But what we were missing is this unplanned, informal, asynchronous, we call it, like this idea of what kind of asynchronous communication can happen within the class, not only between students, but also with faculty and guest people and guest teachers, that is not an email, which is also another way of creating certain limitations. So we are prototyping still that space, but we believe that that's the kind of space that needs to exist, like the opportunity to create the informal conversation that happens when you are walking to the classroom. That communication that happens when you share something that you are doing informally, and that people can comment on that and can give you feedback on that. I think also that definitely the class, the idea of the class to go to a place to listen to someone else, you can move the talking head into a screen is better than to have it in the same space. And then probably the classrooms and the notion of going to join a class or a course physically is related to making more like learning by doing. I don't know what you think, Tomas. You're muted.
Yeah, well, for this semester, for the first time since like 8 years or 16 studio classes, I am teaching first-year students. And I used to teach like fourth-year students in the last semester. So this is a complete change. And imagine a first-year student with 18 years old. He's going to his very first experience in the university, and then COVID happens. So all these interactions are like increased by 300 because he wants to party, he wants to meet new friends, he wants to live the university experience, but also you as a professor, you need to teach them what is design in a studio class, So the idea that I'm imposing is that their houses are their labs, Instead of the university is the space to learn, their houses is the space to learn. So how do we design with the things that they have in their homes? So many students raised their hands and they said, hey, it's impossible. I need to go to the library. I need to go to the bookshop. I need to go to the shop and buy cardboards or wood or whatever. So we start to analyze the material flow inside the houses. And we realize that the house or the way that we were teaching design was, I continue with my idea, was based on the abundance. Go and buy whatever material you want, use whatever machine you want from the Fab Lab or for the analog lab, whatever, use whatever you want and design whatever you want. But now, thanks to COVID, thank you COVID, actually, It's a pity that this is a huge disease and it's a worldwide disaster, but we must wake up. So thanks to COVID, students are learning that they have to design from the scarcity, from the limits that they have in their houses. And we scale this up. The house it could become easily a city, because the city doesn't produce any results as I showed in my presentation. The rural settlements present. So the city doesn't produce anything. And in fact, the earth doesn't produce too much. The earth doesn't produce the sufficient goods or recycle of the natural system in order to design in abundance. So the first idea is that to think our houses as our lab, or maybe we can reduce that to our bedrooms. If we can design whatever we want to design, any challenge with the things that we have in our bedroom, then we are maybe prepared to design in the world. Not before. So you cannot go outside if you're not ready, if you can't design in your bedroom, you know, with the 5 or 10 things that you have around. That's what's one idea. And the second thing about we were talking, Tomas, is that we need to change this classic standardized education of 3-dimensional space into a 4-dimensional learning, you know, where the time is a factor also. Yeah. So, and how do we manage time? How do we manage global time? So we can have this global infrastructure, global learning, global platform of learning, but at the same time, we need this local space of micro interactions, where a student or the person who is learning from this global knowledge that is common to everyone, where we can have standardized things, must learn and must do solutions or interventions in their specific context. That's the way how do we can control different speeds, you know, or different scales. The first scale is how do we design a bedroom, and the second scale, how do we design to a city or to the world, but also the scales are where do we take knowledge from, or more than knowledge, information from, and how do we translate that information to knowledge and to apply the, you know, environment. So this completely changed the mindset of how do we teach design or architecture or any creative discipline, but also the way how do we can understand our context. We must do that change.
Definitely. I think that before we jump to the last question, I think this you know, this idea of you being a student of design when you go to the classroom and then going outside, and then you are this other person, and then you are this other person, and then you are, you know, you are the son, you are the friend, you are the design student. I think now we're seeing like you are that person, and that's how it is. And then this physical kind of have this context defines you somehow, starts to disappear and be more blurry, more fluid. No, I definitely believe in this idea of the hybrid and more fluid this learning experience, and not definitely we should, you know, remove them. I said before I would, you know, both to remove the word maker or to tag people with saying that you're a maker. And the other one is like when remove education, and when people is educated, it's more like creating learning experiences and learning spaces. They could be digital, physical, and they can happen in different considerations of time. So I'm going to jump to the last question, and I will start with you, James, because
can I? There's a comment I want to make, just a quick comment, which is to kind of connect what Oscar was saying with what Tomas was saying, which is that I think from the work that we've done together, Tomas, that we very much tried to get our students to understand that they were part of the design process, that they don't do something in the abstract. It's not like they're designing something that they won't have to be part of in the future. They're not creating a design, but certainly when they were working with us at master's levels, they're not doing something in theory. They're doing something because it's tied to their values, and that if it's the right kind of project, it's something that they want to continue doing. So this notion of like design education, and I'm also working with first-year university undergrads, that what we're trying to do is create a kind of simulation to start with. But over time, you need to break that idea of the simulation and start building in the fact that they're not working in theory, they're working in reality. And it's not that the designs that they create are also the life that they lead. So are they designing something that requires entrepreneurial skills? And if they don't recognize that and therefore make a decision, will I be an entrepreneur? And if the answer is no, well, then they better stop doing what they're doing or modify it so that it does fit their idea of their life. So I think this idea of like starting from your bedroom and recognizing the constraints, recognizing your role in the design process is a really nice one, but it also connects to this idea of design in the first person. It's like, you've got to be where you're designing for as much as you can be. You've got to understand that you are in this process, that you don't create something as a fiction, you don't put it into the world and hope that someone else can make high volumes of it, and you at the end of it will get this kind of capital return on investment. That is a model, but it's a kind of oversimplification of a model, which let's hope there's a kind of redundancy to, because we can see what the implications of that are. It's massive extraction of materials and incredible generation of waste. So I just wanted to connect that.
That's a perfect connection. If you allow me, I'm gonna jump to use one of the questions from the audience. I recommend you also to go to read in the chat in your right hand. You will have some comments that actually are some directed to you as panelists. But I will take the question from Mitali. It's one of our students actually, and I will. It's targeted to James, but I'm going to, this can be our closing question, no? And I think it's a quite relevant one. Mariana Mazzucato talks about it. What's the value of everything? What is value, right? And I think that we have been driven, especially design, has been driven by certain values that are part of the construct of society as values, no? I think that we saw, James, how, students were focused on going to a specific school in order to get a specific type of outcome, to become part of a specific type of system, because they were, they had an expectation on be just another part of the machine somehow, no? So, and that was in a certain construction of values. Now that we're seeing like more and more than GDP is being more criticized, I think they have been really interesting discussions globally around, should we go back and restart our economies to try to achieve GDP, high GDPs, and start again the rat race? So the question is, what is that value that you are talking about, James? And we start from you, and then we use it to have a little intervention from everyone to close the discussion.
That's a big question. So anything that you can perceivably that is worth something to you, right, is valuable. And what we're looking for is the creation or the sustainment of value. Now, one of the issues with this is that some value is easy to transact and other is not. So money is this amazing technology which allows you to exchange value within a fairly complicated, well, incredibly complicated framework. And the benefit of fiat money these days is that you can generate that. You can essentially borrow from the future. So it's incredibly complicated, but in simple terms, if you're going to talk about value, it has to be something which will satisfy the person who is involved in that process in a number of ways. So I require, through my job, I require payment because I'm obliged to pay my mortgage. So that will satisfy me if some of the value of my job is financial. But that's not the only value. There's other values like self-worth. There's other things like building social connections. There's all sorts of other value creation that can go alongside it, some of which can be accounted for in simple terms, some of it is transactional, some of it isn't. Like if someone smiles at me and makes me feel good about myself, it's not something I can package and then trade with someone else. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that really answers the question, but I think from an individual perspective, you've got to make a judgment about what is viable value and desirable value.
Anastasia?
There are different kinds of value, like emotional value, social value, but I will grab from mainly what Oscar was saying, the personal perspective, and I will personally say that you need to be self-coherent. For example, if you are, let's say, I will say an example, you're tackling the textile industry. You should be fasting for fashion for the next 10 years. this is actually the value that I see in the personal coherence in order to drive the change. And it's difficult. It's difficult to do that, but you need to be coherent. You need to try to be. So yeah, there are different kinds of value, but I think that if we take it from the perspective of Oscar's talk, then we will be talking for like coherence as a personal value that drives you for demonstrating and manifesting change. I actually believe that we many times we feel as if we are guinea pigs. We feel that we are guinea pigs in front of technology, that Facebook is grabbing our data. And then I tell to my students, okay, if you feel that you're a guinea pig for a big company, just be a guinea pig for your own ideas itself as well. So yeah.
Be part of your own experiment.
Yeah. Well, there are also like many, it's kind of tricky. It enters to a bigger conversation, but as I think also that the technology we are given is not functioning perfectly, so we shouldn't take it for granted.
Ale?
Yeah, pretty tricky question. But I think when I heard it, the first thing I thought about was information. What's the value? Like, the information has a lot of value right now in everybody's life. So you create your own reality right now from information. You know, like every day you create your reality from your experiences, from what you see, from people you interact with. But I think right now in this situation, most of what we create around us comes from the information we have access to. And there is so much information in the internet. You can have, I read the other day, you can have access to more information than the NASA 10 years ago, right? So you have access to all the knowledge in the world, but then you just decide what to read or what to believe. And I think that's very, very, very difficult. Sometimes I talk to other people and it's like they're living in a different world, but it's just because of they chose him to, to believe or to read or to have access to different information than I have. So I think it's also a very important thing that's going to happen right now. Like, what's the truth? Well, we can start talking about truth, but that's also very, very difficult thing to talk about. I think it's very important. Every person has different access to different things, and I think it's creating different environments in our minds.
Yeah, I think that we live in the information obesity in a way, no? So I think it's more about like how you curate that information and how you make it meaningful for you. And I think also in
relation, that's good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in relationship with Anastasia also, it's like we are paradoxical by, our reality is super paradoxical. We are all now talking about changing the world, embedded in the problem, no? The same technologies that make possible to have this meaningful conversation are by design extractivist. So it's really living in a paradox. That's the other thing that triggered my head when Anastasia was saying that part, no? Like being coherent is super, being a hero. If you're coherent, then you're a hero somehow. But Oscar, let's go Oscar, Tomas, and then Nadya. Value.
It's a really, really tricky question. And I think that what I try to do with my presentation is show it by example. So I think that what's the way to evaluate value? By example, by showing it. And I think that that's what I try to do with the presentation. If you manage to do it, that's already important. So if you manage to reach all these people, if you manage to get electricity to all these houses, that already shows that it has value. So I think that it's not that much on how much value and exactly how to evaluate it. I think more it's about if it has value, if it has an impact. And I think that for me, I would say impact is more important than value in a way at this moment. And I don't know exactly how to measure it. And I don't think for me, it's the most important thing to do. But I think that showing examples of how this can happen So not just the measuring, but actually show how can you distribute value, how you can share it, and what kind of impact can you have. Maybe that would be the way. I don't really like testing, and I already told Mitali quite a few times that it's not about testing, it's about implementing it and let people adopt it and taking it further. But we'll talk about it with her later, I think.
Super. Tomas?
Yeah, I disagree actually with Oscar.
It's good to
in a
disagree.
semantical way.
There are more than one point of view.
Because imagine that I am someone who believes that who only take care about the economical impact of something. Like he doesn't care about the environmental externalities of something that he's implementing. So because of the project makes him a big economical impact, then the project will be good. So I think that instead of thinking about impact or value, because I also agree, it's a great and tricky question. Maybe what we need to think is about how do we replace the economical based social contract that we have worldwide, and we change it into a social ethical contract. So we must think about value as an ethical thing. You know, we cannot measure things about its impact because there are too many variables, and people might think or might believe that we can have like different ways about how do we evaluate impact or what does it mean impact. But as a society, we should rebuild the social contract with ethics. So we need to rethink about ethics. What does it mean ethical? It's ethical design. So and that's the deep question, you know, because everything that we want to we do when we talk about, hey, let's stop designing objects, let's design intervention, let's create valuable people, let's co-design, let's what do bottom-up approaches, and so on. What we are talking about ethics and coherence, as Anastasia was saying, but also coherence could be tricky. So I think that ethics, it's the way how do we can start talking about value, and we need to let's say take advantage of this situation, of the worldwide situation, to redesign or to rethink about this social contract that creates relationships in between people and institutions also.
Okay, fantastic. That's again, I'm making like these very vain comments in the feedback, because if I unpack what you're all saying, like last time you, Oscar and Tomas, we start like we can keep going and keep going. So I'm sorry to make these comments like okay, cool, but it's a way to keep moving. But I think that this is constructing I think it's constructing this space. It's not only an intellectual space that we're sharing here. It's also a practice that we're doing. It's something that we're implementing with students, with researchers, with our teams, and so on. Before jumping to Nadya, because Nadya, you will have like the chance to take everything and destroy it, or make it even bigger. Up to you. We have Michelle Won. She wants to talk. I don't know. Let's see what happens. I hope she's a real person. Michelle? Hi. Can you introduce yourself? Where are you?
I didn't want to talk. I don't know why. I haven't used Zoom before, and I maybe. Do you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes. Where are you?
I'm in Mexico.
Where are you, Michelle?
In Mexico.
Okay.
Sorry, I just joined the meeting.
No.
I don't know what's happening.
Why?
Why
did you join the meeting? What?
I see an information webpage.
Yeah.
I was curious about the program, or it's a competition, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. Of course, the design competition, Design for Living. You can submit ideas, and we're just trying to inspire people to make even better ideas for the competition.
Okay. So
You want to share something with us?
No, sorry, I was.
Okay, but it's nice to meet you, Michelle. Try to submit a
Nice to
project.
meet you.
This was a nice, you know, I don't know how to call it, coincidence. I don't know how to call it. Anyways, yeah, Nadia, value.
I think it's a great time to reevaluate value. It's a time of great urgency where everything is different for everyone. And many of the things that we have taken for granted, things that we have relied on, things that we expect are no longer the case. And a lot of the things that we take for granted and put up with really suck. Like a lot of the stuff that we do all the time is terrible. So people talk about going back to normal and reopening, whatever that means. Whereas we are now been given like a hugely shitty situation where people are dying and everything is being thrown into disarray, but we do have the opportunity to really question what is going on with our world and what is our role in all of this. And I think that some of the stuff that we're doing should permanently change, you know, making it easy for people to learn flexibly, making it possible for people to work in lots of different places, supporting each other in health, in economic viability. Those are all things that shouldn't go back to normal. And understanding what design and manufacturing and distributed production means and what's possible there, I think is even more urgent than ever before. Understanding how can we rely on this localized production? What does it mean to incorporate ethics and values that we haven't seen before in production and supply chains? So yeah, I think value is something that is constantly changing depending on how we change. And even though we're really occupied with the urgency of the now, I do think it would be helpful for us to take this moment to try to make a better future.
I have nothing to add. Yeah, I think I think like this could be a manifesto that we can all sign together.
I hope somebody remembers because I'm too tired to read.
Don't worry, it's recorded. We're going to transcribe it.
Can I say one last thing, which I think would
Yeah.
be interesting for people to think about in the submissions that they make, especially as it relates to value. So I just answered in the question bar, but to the question about value, I think it's a relationship between costs and value. So who benefits from the value and who bears the cost, and where are the costs felt? So if there's any question around value, you also have to think about what the costs are. So in the designs that get submitted in this competition, and if any in submitting it and you're trying to communicate why this would be a good idea, you also need to acknowledge who's going to pay the price of it. And the closer you can couple costs to value in terms of distributed production, localized production, etc., the more you're going to create something that's equitable. Because if it's going to extract value from your location in order to extract resources, but the costs of that are too high compared to the value, that's obviously not going to be something that anyone wants. So I think coupling those two things closely together would be of benefit.
Just to clarify, because I think that you're referring to price and cost, not only in economic terms of money. Yeah. There are cultural costs and there are societal costs. There are things that you leave behind in order to make something else possible.
Oh yeah, the cost you pay for engaging with Facebook is that a corporation will start accruing information on you and creating a digital avatar that they can plug into any number of analytical tools. You know, that's a cost that we all sign up to, but we don't fully understand.
Well, again, I can keep going. And I'm really happy to have shared this space and time, even though that is again, it's so weird to say it's not the same time, it's not the same space, but we're sharing it at the same time. I think that's very contradictory by itself. I hope that is the beginning of more interactions. I think that we are one of the things that we can do is we're going to invite you to join our network, the Emerging Futures Network, in our platform with the master. What do you think, Oscar?
Sure.
I think, yeah. So you can engage with some of the discussions that we're having there and creating this kind of an asynchronous space to interact with students. Nadya, with you, we're going to have a session specifically with students. Remember that? Yeah, they're really looking forward for that. Yeah, this has been extremely valuable and meaningful. I think meaningful is more. I like to, things that have meaning are important as well. I don't know, any final comments you want to add? Should we call the day, the night, the morning, the midday? Go to have breakfast, Nadya. I'm going to sleep. Oscar finished.
That is
lunch.
one of the problems, no? We cannot have beers because Nadya is too early, So that's a thing that we need to solve.
You never know. You never know.
Dr. Peak is a party animal.
so yeah, we need to solve like a digital beer, We need to decide.
Yeah.
That's a project for the Emerging Futures students.
Yeah, but also I think that it's good to meet from time to time again. So I hope. I wonder, we should bet where will be the next place that we will meet all together. You're all invited to come and join me in Indonesia. I think that could be that's an interesting offer. But Barcelona could be.
I suspect we will see each other in Barcelona.
Barcelona seems to be the next place.
Yeah.
Okay, people. Thank you very much again. These things are always can be exhausting or magnificent. This has been a great time and space with you. Stay safe and keep doing the amazing work you do and inspiring the world. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the attendees. Stay tuned
everyone.
for more. Submit your ideas to change the world in the Advanced Architecture Contest. See you all. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Thank you, Tomas.
Thanks.
Ciao.